Welcome to the Procurement Software Podcast, where we aim to educate and inspire you about how technology is changing and shaping our profession. The truth is, there's never been a more exciting time to be in procurement, but only if you're one of those organizations that's embracing the change and driving new developments. And this podcast is all about giving you the tools to help you get there. So buckle up and let's get right into this week's show. Yes, hi, James here. I'm your host and welcome to another episode of the Procurement Software Podcast. Before we dive into this week's episode, just wanting to ask every one of you out there, if you're contemplating a digital procurement transformation, or if you're looking around trying to figure out what's out there in terms of all of the different software that's available on the market, you don't have to suffer alone. Not only do we have a free front end on our website, if you go to app.procurementsoftware.site, you can search and filter over 440 software solutions completely free of charge. But if you want to do more advanced searches and to be able to slice and dice and ask and or questions, depending on what you want the software to do, then you probably need our back-end database. And we have two packages available for that database. You can either buy a 3-month subscription, which is perfect for procurement practitioners that just needed to do a one-time project. If you're looking to source, contract management software or a source-to-pay platform, then you probably only need a 3-month subscription to be able to get to the bottom of that and figure out who your shortlist of vendors should be. And then we have an annual subscription, which is really more geared towards investors, consultancies, or maybe large enterprise center of excellence teams that can have that on a rolling, ongoing basis. Both give you exactly the same functionality in terms of searches and the ability to copy and paste the data that you get from the database into Excel and Google Sheets. It's just really a difference in the time frame that you need the subscription for, and the price is obviously related to that. I wanted to make sure that it was affordable to procurement professionals, category managers, as well as consultancies, investors, and large procurement teams alike. So that reflects the two different price points that we have. If you go to store.procurementsoftware.site, you'll be able to see exactly what you get for each of those options there. But anyway, on to this week's episode. Does direct spend need its own tech stack? Well, direct procurement obviously involves acquiring raw materials and purchase components that are essential for your production process. Indirect procurement, on the other hand, generally deals with non-complex goods and services that support your operations. And this fundamental difference raises then the question, well, does one require a different tech stack to the other? And the answer typically is, it depends. So let me explain that. Most source-to-pay and source-to-contract suites, especially those that are geared more towards enterprise procurement teams, but also those that focus more towards SMEs and the mid-market as well, usually have a strong bias towards use cases that support indirect procurement and indirect spend. And that's probably because, if you're going out to get investment or you're marketing that, there's going to be more use cases for indirect spend than there are typically for direct spend. So if you want to reach the masses and appeal to the masses, then having a tool that focuses more on indirect spend is probably going to be more applicable. But let's look a little bit around how does the technology for direct spend differ to the technology that's available for indirect spend? Well, it's quite difficult to manage bill of materials or BOM spend in a rigid tech stack that is what usually constitutes a source to pay or a source to contract suite. Direct procurement suppliers and stakeholders typically need to consider things like advanced inventory management systems, more around supplier relationship management, supplier quality control systems as part of their operations. And source to pay suites and source to contract suites typically don't have that type of functionality within their tools. So whereas indirect procurement software would typically center around things like improving transactional efficiency, especially around things like purchase order management, expense tracking, vendor master data management, around non-production materials and services spend, the core requirements for direct spend platforms are going to be somewhat different. So what do direct spend platforms typically need or typically feature? Number one, integration possibilities with the wider supply chain and operations within the business. So direct procurement tech is typically going to be able to integrate with supply chain management or inventory and planning systems in order to be able to optimize production schedules and factory planning. Indirect procurement systems, on the other hand, that are typically managing operational and administrative expenditure are going to be more focused around making that user experience nicer for a lot more stakeholders that need to have a nice customer-facing front end, if you will. Because you're going to have a lot more stakeholders, a lot more requisitioners that need to requisition and purchase indirect items that are going to be involved with the direct material space. Second one is risk management. You're going to have a lot of supply critical components that are essential to production when you're managing direct spend. So having things like predictive and analytics and risk mitigation tools built into that technology is then going to safeguard you against potential supply chain disruption. So some type of risk portfolio built into a tech platform is going to make it more relevant to people that have a lot of direct spend and want to manage that through a tech platform. So if we agree then that direct and indirect tech stacks are going to have different features and different requirements, where can tech make a difference if you're looking at direct spend? So I've got 5 particular ones that I'm going to break down here. Number 1 is inventory management. Number 2 is supplier relationship management or SRM. Number 3 is quality control or supplier quality management. Number 4 is risk management, as I touched on. And number 5 is having the ability to integrate with a wider supply chain and operations tech stack that may already be in place, be that your legacy ERP system that you have or anything specific around perhaps production planning, logistics, inventory optimization. There are a whole warehouse management. There are a whole raft of things in the supply chain and operations space that could be key that you would need to integrate with when you're looking at direct material spend. So I'm now going to look at 4 specific areas that technology is having an impact. And I'm going to break those down and also give some examples of some technology, some software companies that are playing in each of these different spaces. So the first one I want to look at is strategic sourcing and cost management. This is very, very relevant to direct spend. Direct spend is, yes, it's focused on quality and lead time, but also because direct spend can make up such a significant amount of a company's total revenue when you look at how much is being spent on raw materials and purchase parts. This is an essential tool in your tech stack that you may need to have. So supplier discovery tools are a big one here. They allow you to streamline how you identify, evaluate, and onboard suppliers for your direct materials. And having some automation within this function ensures that you consistently get to update your supplier databases of who can supply what, maintain your current data that's crucial to your direct procurement process. Examples of players that are in this space that have software that can facilitate this are Alpas AI, Matchery, ScoutBee, 4Street, 7Q1, and in the case of services spend, Apadua. I'm also going to touch here on cost estimation software. This can also help in strategic sourcing and cost management. And these tools provide granular breakdown of costs associated with procuring direct materials, whether that's from raw materials right the way through. Having a comprehensive cost analysis of what something should cost ensures that you're able to assess the impact of each cost component. So examples of software in this space include What's the Price Dynamics, Covalize, Chai, Mintech Analytics, Radar, Lever Data, and Cost Data, Market Data. Then you've got subcontract manufacturing operations, which also fall into strategic sourcing and cost management. These often necessitate integrated solutions to be able to manage those subcontract relationships that you have with third-party manufacturers. So there is technology here that can aid and coordinate the timely sourcing and delivery of subcontracted operations. You can monitor quality control mechanisms in here, compliance with production standards, efficient subcontract management systems, not only streamline your operations, but they also ensure that your subcontractors meet your specific standards. So a couple of players in this space. You've got Part, which looks at CNC manufacturing. You've also got Factory, which looks at CNC manufacturing as well, sheet metal production, as well as 3D printing and surface technology. And then there's another platform called Zetwork that is a marketplace for Indian subcontract manufacturers. We've got a blog post on all of these, actually, if you're frantically trying to write these down while I'm speaking. I should have mentioned this at the start, actually, but there is a link to the blog post on this topic in the show notes, so you can get the links to all of these platforms over there. So the second area that can help with a direct procurement tech stack is supply chain and operations planning. And within this, you've got subcategories of purchase order status tracking tools. So big challenge, big headache for anyone that buys direct materials is being able to track changes to the status of a particular purchase order, whether that's changes to delivery date or changes to quantity. Just having the ability to be able to track that outside of email or outside of ERP really gives you the visibility that needs to be available to everyone in real time. So these updates shouldn't be stuck in a buyer's email box or in a logistics planner's email box that's awaiting action. That can so easily lead to human error if somebody misses that email or doesn't action it on time because they're not behind their desk. So, tracking this in spreadsheets or in email can really drive a lot of inefficiencies. These tools can provide real-time updates that alert you to potential delays and enable you to efficiently track POs to minimize any production disruptions without having to rely on email or spreadsheets. You've got a new product from Kavita AI called Agent PO, which looks really, really promising. I've seen a couple of demos of this. If it does what it says it does, it can really take a lot of day-to-day work out of your email inbox and make it transparent both to suppliers as well as people within the business that are relying on components coming in for the production process. There are also established products out there such as Leverage and SourceDay that do similar things to what Kavita is doing. And then if you're looking at something that's more targeted towards small and medium-sized enterprises, then Anvil, spelt with a Y, is also a product that's worth looking at. Moving on, in supply chain and operations planning, you've also got production planning and inventory optimization software. Don't need to spend too much time explaining what this does. It should be pretty obvious to you, but it can balance inventory levels, crucial for managing direct spend, and it can help you reduce excess inventory, which, as you know, ties up unnecessarily working capital. While it can also highlight any insufficient stock that you may have that can drive production delays or even stock outs. Examples of players in this space include AGR Inventory, Flowlity, Genlot, and Deepfu. Again, all of these are linked to in the blog post, which we've linked to at the bottom of the podcast show notes if you want to go out and check out these links. So the third area where a direct spend tech stack can help you is in the area of quality, third-party risk management, and sustainability. So let's look first at third-party risk management tools. These tools can assess and monitor the risk profiles of suppliers in different geographies and industry sectors, and can also help evaluate financial stability, compliance records, and any operational risks associated with your direct material spend. We've actually got over 40 risk management tools listed in our software finder app over at .procurement site. So just going to give you a quick flavor of some of the players that are out there in this space. They include Apex Analytics, Certa, Contingent AI, Prewave, and Trust Your Supplier. Then we've got supplier quality management software, which also falls under this area. SQM can obviously help to monitor performance metrics, conduct supplier audits, as well as identify and inform any suppliers of rejected materials and help them to manage their corrective actions within that platform. Much can be said about the invisible cost of poor quality and how to measure this, and SQM software is one of the first steps to make sure that you can digitize this to ensure a better production line efficiency as well as product standards. A few different solutions out there in this space, including Audit Comply, Kodiak Hub, Looper, Procurement Meerkat, and Supplios. Also falling under the quality risk and sustainability space are software solutions that can help with Scope 3 emissions accounting. So to be able to essentially do carbon accounting and measure all of the Scope 3 emissions, that is any CO2 emissions that are coming from the supply chain. This is obviously a task that requires deep involvement from procurement to be able to calculate and track that. Examples of players in this space include Sweep, Dato, CarbMe, Plan A, and IV. And then similar to being able to track emissions, also very important in terms of compliance is material traceability, especially if you're buying raw materials or ingredients from geopolitically sensitive areas. You know, I'm just thinking now, if you're buying, for example, cobalt or some of the rarer metals that can only be sourced from very geopolitically unstable regions in the world, or if you're sourcing commodities such as cocoa, where you may have some issues, or textiles even, where you may have some issues with child labor. There are a bunch of solutions out there, many of them that use and leverage blockchain technology to help and assist with material traceability. Some of these include Chainpoint, Brise, Circular, Everledger, MineSpider, SourceMap, Transparency One, and TrustTrace. Again, we've linked to all of these in the blog post at the bottom of the show notes to this episode. And then last but not least, let's move on to number 4, which is niche category specific tools. These are another set of tools that can help you manage direct spend. And this can be broken down into 2 areas for direct spend. Number 1 is drawing-based parts. So if you've got parts that are built to drawings, internet search engines are of limited use here, as are directory websites of parts suppliers, because often the data contained in them is so out of date and the profiles are not updated. You really need something smarter these days that can do that. So if you're interested in sourcing these types of parts, perhaps outside of your home country or region, maybe check out what companies like Jiga, Jiga, or PartSpace are up to in this space, just to get a flavor of what's available out there. The other one that's more niche category specific is spare parts management. And I've got some experience in this actually. Managing spare parts is a nightmare. I did it in my career. I managed MRO spend for a number of years. I managed MRO across 37 production sites for a large FMCG company, and each plant had different taxonomies, and there were several different legacy ERP systems. And you know how it is. Everyone thought that their system was the best system. Change was resisted at every opportunity. And I just wish back in, when was it? 2011, 2012, when I was doing this, if I was able to leverage AI back then to be able to clean material master data and spare parts lists, and then to be able to check these items against bills of material for new products, or to cleanse material master data from disparate descriptions and systems, that would have been an amazing opportunity to drive value much faster and to show tangible results and ROI on being able to clean up all of this data. What's available now and what's possible now versus just a few years ago is mind-blowing. There are a couple of great tools out there that can give you more clarity on your spare parts. I suggest you go out and have a look at them in more detail. Go and look at their websites or watch some of their webinars to see what they can do. Creatives is one solution. SpareTech is another one, as is Sparrow Parts. So you now have a few options in this space as well. So does direct materials procurement require its own tech stack? I certainly think there's a business case on some of these different areas. It really depends on what your specific challenge is and where within this whole supply chain you think that tech could deliver some competitive advantage to your most pressing problems and challenges. But I do definitely see that direct materials is kind of divergent, and there's this whole new ecosystem of tech that's out there that supports it. Obviously, being able to get the investment and to be able to justify the ROI in some cases is trickier than indirect spend, because it's more than just a headcount and a transactional efficiency discussion. It's more about, and I know this is a tricky conversation, but it's more about risk management, cost avoidance, value management more holistically. And for those of you that listen to the podcast regularly, you'll hear me talk about how procurement is moving more away from being a cost savings function to being more a total value management function. And I do think justifying the ROI is a little bit harder here for direct spend, because it's less about traditional savings and more around avoidance and risk management and driving value. But for the companies out there that are able to think long term and do have perhaps a more progressive CFO in that sense, that has an open door and a sympathetic ear towards this type of argument, then there is a huge advantage that all of these tech platforms could potentially deliver to you, depending on what your specific requirements could be. So I hope that's given you a flavor. We've really only scratched the surface of what direct materials tech stack can do for you. But to answer the original question, does direct procurement need its own tech stack? I would categorically say in certain instances and circumstances, definitely yes, but you certainly need to have your ducks in the row in terms of how you approach that conversation with operations and ultimately with the CFO to get your business case right, to ensure that you have the best chance of getting a budget to invest into some of these platforms. That's all for this week. Thank you very much for listening. If you do like the podcast, please do me a favor and go and hit that follow button on Spotify or that subscribe button in Apple Podcasts. And if you really like us, then please also write us a review so as we can help to reach more people. Reaching people by word of mouth is always the best way. And if it comes from a fellow procurement pro, then it's always going to be more of a validation than just discovering us organically. I will catch you same time next week. Until then, take care wherever you are in the world, and bye for now.